I want to teach you how to rank keywords and dominate them for years to come. Hey, what is up, guys? It is Harrison Barron, the Millennial Entrepreneur, and like I just said, I'm going to show you guys the exact process that we use at my agency to grow our clients' websites. Now, this is not a pitch or anything like that. This is pure training. This is exactly what we do at my agency. This is exactly what I teach my employees, and the process that we go through to start ranking our clients for different keywords and phrases on Google. Now, I'm going to teach you two different aspects. One, keyword research, and two, optimizing your website for those specific keywords. So if you don't know by now, there's two ways to rank on Google. Number one is finding low difficulty keywords to get into, but the second part is actually optimizing your website and letting Google know, hey, I'm a really trustworthy and authoritative figure in that space. And this is where a lot of people get really confused. They focus so deeply into one area of SEO where they're just like, hey, I have the lowest or the best keywords, right? There's some decent search volume behind them. They're pretty low competition, which is great. However, there's a certain point when it doesn't matter what keywords you really go after, Google might not trust you, especially in certain areas. So maybe it's digital marketing, or maybe it's plumbing, or maybe it's carpentry, or maybe it's power washing. These are all different little pockets of areas where maybe there's already a couple experts in there, or you don't have enough content on your website that would make you look like an expert to show Google, hey, we are the people to go to. So I want to share with you guys the process, kind of figuring out and just dialing in, hey, you know what, I need to create a little bit more of this, or I need to go find a couple more keywords in this area. And then ultimately not only locating those keywords, but also monetizing those keywords. Because I think a lot of people forget the whole point of doing this is probably to make money, right? And if you're watching this and you have a personal blog, you probably want to make money. And if you're a business watching this, you're probably going to want to rank for these keywords and make money either way. So let's jump into my computer here, and I'm going to show you guys a couple different programs. So obviously we have Google Search Console. Now, I'm using my website as an example. We have 120,000 impressions, 1.47K clicks, and this is over the last 3 months. Now, this website is just breaking the year-old mark, and I'm pretty happy with the results. They could be a little bit better, but I'm testing it out on a platform called Kajabi, which is a course-building platform. So any interest, there's a 14-day free trial down below. But in here, you're going to start to see a bunch of keywords. Now, I rank for over 1,000 keywords, which is phenomenal. But there's a couple different areas where I start to see my website slack, or I think that there's probably a lot of potential. Now, going forward on my website, I'm going to be focusing a lot on a platform called Kajabi and just doing SEO-related content, building content on there and how to get better traffic and find ideal clients and really have them come to you, right, as the authoritative figure. And that's what this entire video I'm going to base around, just for me as an example. Now, you're going to plug into whatever you choose. But right off the bat, you'll start to see in here in your Google Search Console, you want to take a look and you want to start to see what's ranking versus what's not ranking. So I'm going to add in your average position here. And what really is concerning to me is the stuff that's not ranking, right? So LinkedIn algorithm tool, free podcast platform, Facebook versus Lineable, right? LinkedIn banners, LinkedIn automation tools. Now in this is something that shows me that, hey, you know what? I don't know what's going on here. Like I'm in a really bad position. Now, granted, I've started to get some impressions, and that's the alarming thing. Most people, they think like, well, this one right here is not alarming. Let me pull this down here so you can see it. But this one right here is not alarming because I have one click, but I only have 3 impressions, and I'm position 98. But some of these other ones, I'm position 98 for LinkedIn automation tools, and I have 84 impressions. There's for 84 impressions and starting to get past 50, there should be an alarm that goes off in your mind that says like, hey, maybe I need to go refine the content, or maybe I need to build other pieces of content around that, creating maybe either a pillar post or a staple post, and just saying, hey, I need to show Google that I'm really an expert in this. So maybe I'm just missing a couple more articles talking about LinkedIn automation, and together a rising tide will lift all ships, right? By me adding these little bits of content in there or articles, this will then give me the opportunity to start ranking more and more, and it'll show Google, hey, Harrison Barron is a authoritative figure in the LinkedIn space, and start sending him more and more traffic. So these are red flags for me, right? 138 at page 98 right here. Or position 98, that's really not great. Now, there's a couple other factors to take into play, right? Google still hasn't quite figured out where I belong in this. If I pull it out to 1 year, you're going to start to see, okay, it's just starting to rank earlier this year, and you could definitely tell that Google's still trying to find out where it belongs in the algorithm. And the reason why you can tell this is because you'll see this incomplete orange line, right? This orange line should be thoroughly complete, and you should be able to kind of see where it's going. On top of that, you should have a level of impressions that's consistently climbing. It might not be perfect, but these dip downs prove to me that Google really doesn't quite know where I belong, and that's because either I don't have enough content based on that area, or it's just still too new of an article. And the way you can figure out if it's too new of an article is, what should my LinkedIn banner be, right? If I'm going to click on this, I'll actually be able to go in and see the date on my website, April 10th, 2020. So it has actually been out for specifically 1 year, and it's really still not ranking. This is, I don't want to say a cause for concern, but there's definitely some concern there, because it's been online for a year and it's just starting to rank now, which is okay, but typically it should have started to rank earlier. Now, I did launch my website just over a year ago, so it can take a little bit longer for my articles to rank. But this is a clear indicator that, hey, I probably don't have a strong enough keyword. So that being said, I'm gonna show you what you need to do next. And I use a program called Phrase. I really like Phrase. Phrase happens to be a phenomenal program for writing content and for doing some Google search traffic and figuring out what you need to create content on. So the cool part is it actually will give you recommendations based on your Search Console data. And this is where it'll say, like, hey, these are really good areas that you probably need improvement on, or you might need to fix some stuff. So in here, like the first thing, LinkedIn Premium, right? LinkedIn SSI, Social Sales Indicator Ranking. SSI score, LinkedIn in-mail credit, right? And it's actually telling me, hey, you need to either create these and you need to optimize around this word. So it'll actually give me what is LinkedIn private message. These are queries that I've already started ranking for, so I probably need to go back and modify them. But for new keywords, right, this is probably not going to be the best place, and I'm actually going to show you the next program to do that. But a lot of people, they don't realize that they probably already have some bit of a foundation, and that foundation is phenomenal to start at. So right in here, LinkedIn messages, right? I need to optimize around this. Are LinkedIn messages private, right? That's a blog that I know that I have, right? But is LinkedIn messages private? Can LinkedIn messages be seen by others? Might be another article or an extension of an existing article, right? Because it says optimize in here. And you can click start a document and it'll go through the process of helping you figure that out, right? And I'll go through that, but I just want to show you guys what this actually looks like. Now it's going to give you create, track, right? Social medium, inappropriate content, inappropriate things, right? So it's actually telling me, like, hey, you should track this. This is probably an article that is ranking somewhere on the top spot on Google, near position right now. It's saying position 7, right? And if I go back, you can actually tell that this I don't know what it's currently ranking at, but it's usually up there, posting inappropriate things on social media, right? It's position 3 right now. So nothing concerning, right? It really started ranking later last year, and it's still kind of, Google's still trying to figure out where it belongs. And if I take this and if I just plug it into Google, I should be able to see where I rank. So parents.com, Digital Citizen Academy, .org, and then me, harrisonbarron.com, can posting inappropriate content on social media, right? So this is probably something I may need to revisit, right? There's also some other factors to take into consideration. So what are these rankings? What level of authority do they have? So parents.com, Digital Citizen Academy.org, right? And then there's me. So this is information that I probably need. Now, I'm not too concerned because I did have position 1 for a while, and I really didn't get that much traffic from this article, which is totally cool. But it's actually just telling me, hey, you should be wary of that and maybe go in and start to modify and tweak that piece of content, and that's great, right? And then it'll just tell us, hey, you should probably create some articles around these other things like premium cost, podcast marketing, SSI LinkedIn score, right? It thinks that I could definitely rank for those, and I'm already starting to rank for those, but I need to create those additional pieces. That way I can really start to rank and get to where I need to be. So I wanted to share that with you. And then if you wanted to go in here and you actually wanted to look at this, right, let's just go in here. We'll look at this LinkedIn SSI score. What is a good LinkedIn SSI score? And if you click create document, it'll actually allow you to either create a document. In this case, I'm using an existing document, and it's pulling that from my Google Search Console, right? And the target query, save in folder general, and then we're going to be able to create the document here. Right, and it's actually going to tell us, it's going to show us the document, right? That's perfect. That's exactly what you want. And now it's going to pull up we'll call it magic on the side. and it's going to go through and it's actually going to try to read and see what those other articles are either writing about or their headings, and it's going to pull in information that's going to be able to allow me to optimize. And I think a lot of people, once again, they really don't optimize their existing content, right? So I have 9 out of 7, right? Sales opportunities, sales goals. It's saying I probably need to add a bunch of these words in there. And it says I'm about 50%, 58.2% of the way there. So, LinkedIn SSI score, it's telling me I need to add this in there again. And if I don't, I'm missing out on opportunities. So I have to sneak this in here somewhere, and not in a bad way, but it's a long article, right? This is a no joke article, right? And this is just the process you have to go through. And the cool part is you can get in top results, right? It's going to allow me to see what other headings other people are using on their websites. It's going to allow me to look at other questions people are asking, any related articles, any related pieces of content, and then just a topic score in general, right? And 38.4% is the average score across competitors, right? So I'm well above the average. But if I really wanted to rank for this, I would just have to go through and add a little bit more. So this is modifying your existing content to make it work better. If I wanted to, I could go back in and start to tweak and modify, or even make another piece of content around this that would tell Google, hey, I am an SSI expert, social sales indicator score. Sorry about that. I just had a total brain fart. But this is what it is, right? This is exactly what it is. It's going to bring you through this entire article. So that's how you would use phrase to modify and update your existing content, because a lot of people, they're so focused on going after new keywords that they lose sight of what's already happening and the good stuff that's already happening on their existing website. Now, the second thing I want to bring in, and this is really where you can start to find good keywords, really monetizing keywords. And the cool part is they have a whole area where you can go into. You can add projects, you can go through, you can see, similar to phrase, where you'd be able to see what you're currently competing for. But the one specific tool that I want to use in here is the keyword magic tool. Now, they just did a total overhaul on this tool, and it is finally great. And this is called SEMrush. It is a direct competitor to Ahrefs, and you can go in here and you could start to write in your keywords. So for example, I mentioned already, I want to go after Kajabi, right? This is a hot topic right now in my world, and you'll start to see the keyword difficulty for the exact keyword of Kajabi is pretty competitive, right? And they fixed their keyword scores. This used to be less than good. I'll leave it at that. But now it has very easy, possible, difficult, right? And then you have your custom range. So if I want to do a custom range, we'll go 0 to I would say 49%, right? Because it says possible and then difficult and hard and very hard. Now, some people may be able to go after those hard, very hard if you have a very authoritative website. It's been around for a long time, but that's usually not the case for most people, right? So if we have Kajabi pricing, Kajabi app, Kajabi versus Teachable, Kajabi review, right? But let's just say I wanted to go through and I wanted to look up Kajabi alternative, right? And this is probably a decent keyword, right? It's at a rank of 32. But, is there better keywords? I don't know. I mean, you could go after, this is going to rank it by volume. So chances are pretty good. Like Kartra versus Kajabi is screaming to me, I need to go make an article about that. That just says, hey man, you are missing out on potential revenue if you don't make this, right? Because it's got a score of 19, it's got 590 clicks, and if I just go into Google, right, and I take this word, and it'll bring me over if I do a Kajabi versus Kartra search, but what I really want to see is Kajabi versus Kartra in here and who's ranking for this. So todaytesting.com, Kajabi versus Kartra 2021, Kajabi versus Kartra, Kartra Home, right? And this one might be pretty difficult to rank for, but some of these other ones like digitalmarketing.org and themes, I'm assuming that's how you say that. Digitalmerchant.com, bloggingx.com, right? So these people have already identified that this is probably a low competition keyword. Codeless.co. But the interesting part is I really want to actually open these up and look to see if these are something that I want to write about or even potentially rank for. So we have Kartra.com, right? This is going to be a pretty decent article. Is it the best? Honestly, no, not even a little bit, which makes me feel a lot better. But this article is actually pretty good, right? You have A-themes, I guess it's athemes.com. And I mean, they have this is a great article, right? So this is definitely going to be something that if I wanted to compete for, I'm going to have to put in some homework and some work on this one. This is not like a super, even though Google says it's easy, writing a better article, mainly compared to it's A themes, is going to be quite challenging, right? And if I pull up my little SEO minion up here, you can see that this is 2,600 words. I'd be curious to see if this breaks a couple thousand here. And we'll see, 3,600 words. I mean, that's a no-joke article. Somebody really had to do a lot of research and a lot of writing on this topic. But here's the interesting part. They probably are going to make money off of this, and that's where I think a lot of people don't necessarily think about it. Now, keyword difficulty score 19. Now, I could easily go in there if I chose to and write a better article than those, but it's definitely not something I could bang out in a weekend. This is definitely probably a week's worth of work on here. You also have some other words: Kartra versus teachable, Kartra versus thinkific, right? Teachable versus Kartra, right? These would probably be in the same category. Kajabi versus Kartra, right? That's what we're almost on. So these are different ways, and you actually have to go through here, right? So Kajabi membership site, right? And I'd be curious to see what comes up over this. So let's just see what Kajabi membership site looks like. And what I'm looking for specifically is going to be potentially a blog article first, but really like what's ranking. So I'm never going to outrank Kajabi for their own keyword, right? It's the name of their website. Help Kajabi, Supply Gem, 6 best Kajabi membership sites examples. This is probably an article that I would have to compete with, right? And this is a light article. This is really nothing too crazy. Brenda Bouchard, right? Abbey of Horses. You have Michelle Langley, Janine Bayman, right? These are all Brian Dixon, The Empowered Entrepreneur. Like, these are all great websites, right? But this is a pretty thin article. So this makes me actually think, I betcha I could probably rank or outrank these people, right? It's 1,000 words. I could probably go in and outrank these people. Now, here's the thing that you have to consider. Once again, I can't just write one article on Kajabi. I need to go on a content creation rampage. My next 10, 15, 20, 25 articles all need to be Kajabi, because if I just put Kajabi once on my website, even though Google knows that I've built Kajabi, my website, harrisonbarron.com, on Kajabi, I still need to kind of give it that little push to say, hey, you know what? I could probably rank for these, right? If I just have one on there, it's probably not going to rank high enough, right? Kajabi templates, Kajabi themes, right? Podia versus Kajabi. I don't know what Podia is. Kajabi website examples, Kajabi careers, Kajabi community, Kajabi competitors. I mean, this is a pretty extensive list. Kajabi blog, right? So I happen to actually be pretty good at Kajabi blogging. Kajabi examples. These are all pretty low competition keywords, where if I write 10 or 20 articles on this, if we do some quick math here, and we look at it, let's just say we write 10 articles, and the average in here is, I don't know, we'll say 250, right? So you do 10 times 250. I know that some whizzes on here, but that's an extra 2,500 page views per month. Now, there's other things that your article is going to rank for, right? Because a lot of my articles, if you actually go in and do some research on this, it's pretty cool. A lot of your articles will rank for a variety of different keywords. So we'll just do pros and cons of Alignable right now, and I'm going to pull that up. And what I want to do is I actually want to grab the specific page that it's attached to, which is LinkedIn versus Alignable. And then I'm going to remove the queries. And this is all the queries, right? It's actually ranking for 43 different queries. So pros and cons of Alignable, Alignable versus LinkedIn, Alignable login, Alignable, pros and cons of LinkedIn, what is Alignable, disadvantages of LinkedIn, LinkedIn learning, pros and cons. I mean, this is a pretty extensive list of all keywords that I'm currently ranking for on one specific article. And that's the beauty of this. So yes, there may be a limit, it might say, hey, there's 2,500 words on just ranking for the word Kajabi, but the interesting part is actually the fact that there's probably a slew of other keywords. So that 2,500 might bump up to 25,000. Now, is that a long shot? Potentially, but it's probably closer to 10,000 keywords per month or 10,000 visitors per month that I could potentially rank for. And these are all pretty low competition keywords that I could go after. So what I encourage you to do is actually go in here and just start playing around and just start testing, right? If I wanted to do, I don't know, let's go LinkedIn, because that's one that I've done quite a bit. Or you know what, let's do podcasting. It's a little more exciting. So I'm going to just search podcast, and I want to see what comes up. I'm just going to close out of all these windows while we wait for this to load here. And now it's going to give you a bunch of keywords. And now keep in mind, it's also keeping my custom range of 0 to 49, right? If I open this up and got rid of this, it's going to give me way more competitive keywords, right? The Joe Rogan podcast, Google podcast, Apple podcasts, right? Super competitive keywords, best podcast for 2020. Now, I did mention that I was going to add one more program and that I just happened to close out of. But let's just look at, 0 to 49 again. And let's just look at what it kicks back to me. So I want to search. It should go. Let me search that. And while it's gonna load, okay, it pulled up already. Let's go to Keyword Sheeter. And this is kind of where the magic begins to happen. So if you want to look for, you always want to look for like low, especially when you're first starting out, you want to look for low competition keywords. So X22 report podcast, I don't know what that is. Podcast logo, right? If you could write a really good article on podcast logo, right? Or maybe you're a podcast logo maker, you probably want to write an article on podcast logos. So, Charlie Kirk podcast, you have Charlie Ward podcast. I don't know who those people are. Missing in Alaska podcast. I mean, this is pretty interesting keywords here. Down the Hill podcast, Mike Adams podcast. I don't know any podcast icon. Okay, so obviously podcast logo is and podcast icon. So now we're gonna go to Keyword Sheeter, right? And now, yes, that's my keyword, right? I've figured out what keyword I want to target, right? Let's just say podcast logo. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to type in here podcast logo, and I'm going to let this run some magic on here. And what it's going to do is it's going to pull a ton of information for a variety of those variations of keywords. So it's going to use the podcast logo as the word, but now it just wants to give me a bunch of different ideas for articles, right? And this will literally go on infinitely. I've left it running for like 10 minutes, and it just gives you thousands and thousands and thousands of keywords. But for the sake of this, I'm just going to stop it right now, and I want to show you guys what it's actually returned. So you'll see podcast logo maker, podcast logo ideas, podcast logo size, podcast logo examples, podcast logo dimensions, PNG, template, transparent, Apple, art, aesthetic, right? Podcast addict logo, podcast app logo. These are all different ideas that it's going to give me that now I can go make content, right? I can go drop it in a phrase. Phrase is going to kick me back a bunch of really good information. And now I can actually do something with this, right? Podcast logo Canva, right? Maybe you're teaching people how to make podcast logos. So podcast logo colors, right? How to go, okay, what are good podcast logo colors? And the longer you let it run, let me actually keep letting it run here as we go through this. But it's pretty wild, the things that it's going to kick back, the information that it's gathering, how to change podcast logo on iTunes, right? Maybe that's a good article I want to go after, right? So it's still using the word podcast logo and having multiple pillars of content, right? They're all going to lift each other up. So maybe one article is how to change podcast logo on iTunes. Maybe another one is podcast or Apple podcast logo requirements, right? Or iTunes podcast logo requirements. That would obviously go hand in hand. Telling Google, hey, either put these both in one article, or two, write two different articles, and we are going to lift you up together, which is where I think a lot of people, once again, they miss out on huge amounts of revenue, right? There's so much good information here. iTunes podcast logo update, right? At SVG, I saw in there, podcast logo images, right? I like the editor one. I think that's pretty good. And it's literally just going to keep running and running and running. And you'll see this thing it just keeps spinning. How to resize an image for iTunes podcast. I mean, this is such good information for you to leverage and use. And now it's coming up. It's just a little off screen here, but a podcast cover dimensions, right? I mean, this is really good information for people to know. So you could target that one keyword podcast logo and then creating additional content around it. And this is just going to give you a bunch of different ideas and really the starting place. And like I said, you could take this information, right? If we go in a phrase here, we'll go back in a phrase and we'll do an overview, and this we can start a new piece of content, and then we can target search query, right? So I want to go after, I don't know, let's see here. Let me stop this thing so it stops giving me data here. And I like the podcast logo. I don't know. Let's go with design ideas. Perfect. That's going to be a pretty good article. Podcast logo, design ideas. I'm going to drop that into phrase, and I'm going to hit generate document. And this is the beauty of it. So now it's already going through a Google search, right? And it's going to tell me hey, these are the best, these are who's ranking for podcast logo design ideas, right? Because this is the article, right? How to make better podcast logo design ideas, or 10 great podcast logo design ideas. And you can then either figure out how to plug these in, right? I did say monetize. So maybe there's affiliate income in here. Maybe you sell them directly, right? And this is the exact same process you do if you're a plumber, carpenter, power washer, landscaper, website designer, anything like that. It doesn't matter what industry you're in. You can just drop that in here, and it's going to give you thousands of ideas. I'll just let this run in the background really quickly just to show you guys the amount of information. But now you can go through and you can say, hey, you know what? The average word count is 1,500 words. So I know that if I'm going to write this, I need a minimum of 1,500 words, potentially more, right? It has on average 6 headers, 2 links, and 19 images across this entire thing. And here's all of the headings that it's going to have for looka or looka.com. Then you have tailorbrands.com, you have brandcrowd.com, you have 99designs.com, right? How to create a podcast logo design is going to be an H2, right? And you could go through and just start picking out what you like versus what you don't like. And this is just going to give you a layout of what you actually need to do. And you could just, it's as simple as just clicking. You can click here, you can copy it over, and it'll automatically copy it over, right? So you're just going to go through, you're going to read, right? Not processed. How to design stunning podcast cover art that stands out in Apple Podcasts, iTunes. Now, that's super specific, right? But maybe your article, you might want to include this same thing 3 different times, right? So maybe it's iTunes, maybe it's Spotify, and maybe it's Google Play. And by diversifying it, you're then giving yourself the best ability to not only rank, but you're going to give yourself more topics that you could then write on. And this is the process to follow to actually have a shot at ranking for a lot of these keywords. And you're just going to go through, and then after you're done with that, you can just start, you could just start writing and typing in, and you could just go and, testing, or, how to design for Apple. Apple specs are, I forget what I think it's 120 by 120 pixels for your podcast logo. It might be in the 300s, but I can't remember off the top of my head. And that's what it's going to give you. You have your headers right here if you wanted to choose it. Any links you might want to use, right? And any stats you might want to use on here. This is literally what it's going to. It pulls the stats from what it searched. It's pretty impressive. Then you have your topic score, right? It doesn't have anything yet. You have to go in here and you actually have to create this. But the cool part is if I add these two, right, and I can add this again, 3, 1, right, and now I can just keep adding this as many times. And as you begin to write, it's going to start telling you, hey, you're doing a really good job with putting in the information that Google wants to see. And that's the key, is putting in the right information that Google wants to see to give you the best opportunity at ranking. And that's it. I mean, this is still going here. So you have Apple Podcast logo for websites using Apple Podcast logo, podcast logo template free, right? And it's just going to keep going and keep going and keep going. And this is the best thing in the world for you to try to figure out, hey, what do I need to write about? And it's just going to keep kicking out ideas. And now you might be thinking, well, Harrison, I'm not doing a podcast, right? Maybe it's carpentry tools. Right? I'm just going to use carpentry tools, and then I'm going to just make sure that this is spelled right, because it's not carpentry tools. And now I'm going to hit keyword cheater. Now, this is assuming that you've already done all the other keyword research, right? Making sure that it's a topic you can go after. Now it's just going to pull through. And I mean, look at this. Look at how fast this thing is going through and just adding more and more and more ideas. And then you have carpentry tools, right? That's your keyword. Carpentry tools list, carpentry tools and their uses, carpentry tools near me, right? These are all things, and maybe you're a local shop and you sell carpentry tools. Boom, carpentry tools near me. And what you can offer somebody who's might be in a pinch. Carpentry tools with their uses with pictures, PDF. I mean, it's just going to give you a million ideas, right? Grade 8, grade 7, I don't know what any of those things mean. Carpentry tools history. Carpentry tools in, or maybe not Uganda, but in-house. Images with names, right? I mean, the list goes on and on and on. And the cool part is after it starts to go through all the carpentry tools, it's actually going to kick you back more and more data that aren't starting out with carpentry tools, because no offense, but that might not be the most interesting things, right? Carpentry tools you need might be a good example, but maybe it's top 10 carpentry tools you need, right? So you can get a little creative with that by putting a number ahead of it. And as this thing begins to start to keep going, it's still searching, right? But you'll see in here, what tools do carpenters use, right? What tools are needed for carpentry? What are the basic tools needed for carpentry? That's a great article, right? It's still using carpentry tools, right? But now you're talking about the basics, right? And people that are in the basics are probably going to buy. They're usually the ones that are a little more eager to spend money to learn. And it's just going to keep giving you more and more ideas. Aced hardware tool, crossword puzzle, buzzing carpenter tool, crossword puzzle, carpentry tool, 4-letter. I don't know why there's so many crossword puzzles for this, but it's just giving you a bunch of information that then you can take and boil down to maybe a handful of topics, and you say, hey, you know what? These are 10 articles that I want to write about, right? List 5 familiar carpentry tools, and maybe you just modify that a little bit. List of carpentry tools and their uses. What is the tool? What are the tools in carpentry and their uses, right? Basic carpentry tools and their uses with pictures. Boom, there you go. That's probably a great article. It's going to attract a lot of attention. And if I just Google this one, I'm just curious to see what will show up here. How hard would it be to rank, right? I definitely recommend going and getting SEO Minion. It's just a little cheat sheet. 21 essential woodworking tools, 30 best carpentry tools and their uses. Based on the formatting of this one, probably not going to be the best article. All right, so not bad. Usually, and the only reason why I say that is because when you're looking at these, typically it's the first letter of all of these that are capitalized, and that's usually a dead giveaway that it may have not been done by an expert. Nail set, handsaw, chisel and screws, workbench, hand tools and safety tips. Probably not a bad article, not the most difficult article to rank for. It is 3,000 keywords, so it's a little on the longer side. This is on the very long side, right? And if we just look at our little SEO minion here, 4,600 keywords, right? So maybe that this isn't, and you have to do research. There's no fast way to do this. 3,800 keywords. There's no fast way to figure out what articles you should write, especially if it's a little more competitive. This happens to be a little more competitive. So the tools pick, right? Homes, bandsaws, table saws, pole saws. And I bet you they probably sell these. Best, maybe it's just a pure affiliate site, wet saw tiles. By the way, if you're seeing this bar, this is called SEO Quake, and it just kind of gives me a little cheat sheet of what's going on the website. But I mean, these are all going to be not the easiest to compete for. And then you just go back, right? Examples of carpentry tools and tools for carpentry and their uses, right? So maybe we just do examples of carpentry tools. And you're going to keep typing these into Google, and you just want to see what returns, right? Woodworking tools. Let's just look at this article, right? Decent size article, lots of images. If we pull up our little SEO minion here, analyze on page, 5,700 keywords. So, I mean, you're going to spend some time doing this, but the longer you spend doing this, the better the keywords are that you're going to get. And because of that, the more tailored of an article you're going to have, right? And I just use carpentry tools, and carpentry tools might've been a really, really bad keyword to go after. What I'm showing you is by putting that information, the good keyword that you find in SEMrush, and putting a keyword cheater, now it gives you ideas on what articles to write. And then you drop it back in a phrase and you're set. And then you go in, you fill out all that information, you try to make it as happy as possible. You write it, you plug it back, you plug it in a phrase, and it'll give you a grade. And then you go back and you tweak and you try to make it as good as possible. And when you do that, you're going to have blogs that just dominate the Google search engines. Now, if you're more of a generalist, right, it's going to be a little bit more difficult, a little bit more competitive, but if Google knows, hey, you are the industry expert, you're the best website out there that will have all the information for carpentry, your articles are going to rank really fast. I mean, really, really fast. And on top of that, they also have the ability to start outranking other people, so then you could drive way more traffic back to your website. So this is literally the process that we use for keyword research, how to write the article, how to see where there's voids in your content, and ultimately really start staying ahead of the competition. And that's where I think a lot of people go wrong. So I hope you guys found value in this. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you guys have questions, please leave them down below. I'd be really curious. If you guys prefer a different tool, I just love SEMrush. We've been using it now for a couple years, and it's been nothing but great to us. And now that they've fixed their keyword research, it is by far my favorite tool for the price that you pay. So I hope this video helps. Hit that like button, subscribe button, little notification bell, and I'll see you guys later.